Do you want to be more efficient in finding areas to catch bass this spring? Then this video is for you. Today, Kyle Cordiana, Miles Berghoff, and myself, we're going to share some highly productive areas for you to catch bass in the spring, no matter where you live in the country. Hey, stay tuned. This is going to be a good one.
Hey guys, today's video on Bass Fishing Declassified, we're going to talk to you about some sneaky areas to catch some giant pre-spawn bass. So one of the areas that I want to share with you that I love catching big sneaky pre-spawn bass is on highland reservoirs that have a lot of docks. And I'm talking about docks that have cables. So your Lake of the Ozarks, your Grand Lake, basically a lot of Oklahoma lakes where I'm from have a lot of docks with a lot of cables. Typically where that walkway connects to that dock is relatively shallow water, and it's protected water from those docks. So those fish, those pre-spawn, those great big fish, they sit underneath those docks, they incubate their eggs, they get warm, and then they start to transition in between the dock and the bank to spawn. And when that happens, I love targeting those fish with a finesse jig. This particular finesse jig is by Motion Fishing. I love this jig. So what makes it finesse? First of all, it's 5/16 ounce. It's really lightweight. You can go up to 7/16 ounce. But this is a 5/16 ounce, and you notice how they got the skirt trimmed. That's the other thing that makes it finesse jig. It has that little skirted collar, and then it's not a big mop style jig. There's less silicone, less rubber on that. It's lower profile, and because of the lightweight, it falls really, really slow. And slow falling baits this time of year, I think, catch a lot of big fish. They can't stand it. There's something about it just slow falling. They have to eat it. So that's what I'm throwing it on. And then as my trailer, I've got my tub here, my Jean LaRue hammer craws. I love these. They got a lot of cool colors. This color here is green pumpkin purple. I also just use green pumpkin. And then the two trailers I'm going to use, the Jean LaRue hammer craw, they've got one that's just green pumpkin, and they got one that's got the red belly, the infamous Sooner Run color. Those are the two colors that I'm going to go to. You want the trailer to be to where the craws are well past the skirt, because you don't want that skirt to touch those craws, or else it'll kind of render its flapping ability. So right about there is where I want it. So I'm going to cut that thing down. Looks like about a 1/2 inch, and size it up. I'm going to come out just above the crawdad eyes. We're going to rig that right up, slide it on as straight as possible, almost to the crawdad eyes. Hammer craw is a nice little groove right there for you, where it pops out right there. See the groove? Slips out right there. Slide it up and on, and there it is. There's your little finesse jig. That hammer craw's got just enough action. It's not too crazy, not too big. With a finesse jig, you don't want to be big and bulky. You want to be light, compact, and that catches some of those great big pre-spawn females that are set up there staging or even on beds already. So what am I using for this? I like to throw a 7-foot medium heavy rod. I'm not liking a big heavy rod. I don't want a real long rod, because in order to get in front of those docks, I'm having to skip this jig under those docks or flip over that. And I like a shorter rod, because anytime I'm around docks, the shorter the rod, the more accurate I can be with my skip or my pitch. I keep it pretty simple. It's a 7-3-1. I'm left-handed, but I throw it on 15-pound or 17-pound Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon. And what I'm looking for is where on those docks those fish are. So a lot of these lakes have a ton of docks. It could be the first couple of docks in, it could be the middle docks, it could be the docks all the way at the back. But you have to check that out. You got to check them all. But man, when you get on that pattern, it is a winning pattern, I promise you. And it's going to be frustrating. Get out there, practice your skipping, rear back, keep that jig parallel with the surface, and just throw it out there and work with the tuning of your reel. This is a Kistler Series 1 reel. These are really easy to tune until you can get that jig to where it'll skip. And these finesse jigs skip really, really well. So you just got to get your reel tuned and skip it up underneath those cables where those fish are protected. There's never any boat traffic there. It's usually colder that time of year. There's not a lot of travel on those walkways. Those fish feel good and safe, and it's a perfect place to go catch you some great big pre-spawn females. Oh guys, and don't forget, you can go get those Jean LaRue hammer craws at lurenet.com. You can get 15% off the price anywhere else you can find it. Use my coupon code Cordiana15. I'll put that on the screen below. Hope that helps you guys, and it helps me, and helps Marshall. Later, guys.
All right, guys, so there's a lot of different types of cover and structure that you need to focus on during the pre-spawn, but probably one of the most important types of cover, and it's almost like a structure too, but one of those is stumps. You know, stumps are one of those things that I don't hear a ton of people talking about. Everybody really knows that fish do gravitate towards them, but during the pre-spawn especially, stumps are a really, really big deal on the TVA and pretty much any lake across the South that is a reservoir man-made that has those stumps cut off. But anyways, the stumps are really important this time of year, especially for big pre-spawn females, because those females are looking to rub against things to loosen their eggs. And so not only is a stump a really good type of cover for those fish to relate to and to ambush prey, but it's also a really good situation for those big females to loosen those eggs before they move up to the bed to spawn. So that's why they like hard cover this time of year. And so one of my favorite ways to fish these stump fields, you know, if you have a large field that has a lot of stumps in it and you're just trying to cover water and hit as many of them as you possibly can, this bait right here is definitely at the top of the list. Square bill crankbait, you know, this right here is an off-brand, but you use something like a Strike King 1.5. These are really good baits for fishing around stumps because that square bill deflects off the cover very, very well. And so when you have a bait that deflects off a cover, that does two things. Number one, you don't snag as much. Number two, you get that kind of like erratic action that could trigger strikes from fish. And sometimes they're fish that really aren't interested in feeding, but because it kind of deflects in their face, they end up striking it. So a square bill is definitely a really, really good bait for fishing stumps this time of year in the pre-spawning, throughout the year really. But the way that I fish this bait, or the tackle that I use for a square bill crankbait, is of course we got the square bill, usually a 1.5 size is really good, but if you're on a lake that has big forage, bigger fish, maybe a 2.5 size. I like to switch out the hooks pretty regularly, so I use the TBL 930s from Hayabusa to swap out those stock hooks. I use 15 to 20 or sometimes 12, but generally I'd say 15 to 20 pound test a Brazex fluorocarbon line because I'm bumping into you know, very abrasive cover. And then I'm using a 6.5 to 1 gear ratio reel. This is the VLD10. And then I use a 7-foot medium heavy rod. This is the Brian Thrift square bill rod from Fitzgerald Fishing. It's a really good square bill rod. And a pretty good angler designed it too. So anyways, guys, that is how I fish the square bills. But remember, there's a lot of different baits that you can use in these type of situations where you have a lot of stumps in the pre-spawn. You can use slow moving presentations. You can use a Carolina rig, for instance, is really good. Just make sure that you stay efficient, you cover a lot of water, you fish those stumps with multiple casts. You know, you don't just hit them once and then leave. You know, make multiple casts. And also a great way to find out whether or not there's actually fish on a stump is to utilize your forward-facing sonar and 360 sonar to be able to see physically if there's a fish sitting on that structure before you even make a cast. But anyways, guys, that is my sneaky situation or sneaky scenario for pre-spawn bass, and it catches big ones.
If you guys enjoy the content in this video and want more personalized instruction, head to our website, fishthemoment.com. Then go to the virtual lessons page. Here you can book one-on-one virtual lessons with each member of the Fish the Moment team. In these 1-hour lessons, the Fish the Moment team member will break down your lake using Google Earth and a contour line map and answer any questions you have. Whether you're preparing for an upcoming fishing tournament or a fun weekend on the lake, make sure you sign up for one of these one-on-one virtual lessons so you're fully prepared to catch as many fish as possible on the water. Check them out at fishthemoment.com.
Okay guys, my area that I'm going to share, and I'm actually going to use a recent fishing trip where I took 2 high school kids down to a tournament, Caddo Lake, Louisiana, and we ended up getting second place. They had one fish that weighed 6'4". It was a blast. And if you've not seen my video my recent video that I put out, 3 fishing areas for the spring. This is actually one of those areas. So we went and used just from that video, and actually used just kind of one of my checklists of how to find areas in the spring. And that area, guys, is the sneaky backwater areas. So if you're fishing lowland reservoirs, highland reservoirs, or rivers, these are those areas that are your hard to get a boat into areas. And guys, you know, if it's a highland reservoir, it could be a pond that, you know, just say when the lake's level, but it rises, all of a sudden you can sneak your boat in. Another example could just be a field. It could be a tree line. If you're fishing, you know, let's say it's a highland reservoir and you see the lake coming up, and all of a sudden, you know, there's a field back there or there's trees, guys, those fish will follow that rising water. And with that, like I said, there's going to be your other bait fish. There's going to be new life in the water. So this is just one of those areas I like to find, is those sneaky little backwater areas. Now, guys, baits and lures that you use, man, keep it simple. You know, your Texas rig creature baits, Cincos, frogs, flukes. Now, one thing, guys, I want to share with your Texas rig creature baits and with us fishing wood, I think this was a big player, like I said, this past weekend, or when y'all are watching this, maybe 2 weekends ago. But we were using Gamakatsu EWGs, but we had the ring on here. You see this ring? So it makes this thing, you know, more like it makes this thing kind of go back and forth like a wobble head, okay, which I think was a big factor up against the wood. Now, guys, creature baits, we used a couple different creature baits, and I'm going to tell you what to do. This creature bait right here actually is the toe thumper bad crawl. I just got these, and I've actually caught some fish with them today. Like I said, nothing big to brag about, but I'm giving these guys a shot. First time throwing it. So, guys, for this tournament, we were at Caddo Lake, which is a natural lake. I mean, some people might say it's a lowland reservoir, but it's a natural lake, really a swamp. 1,000 cypress trees if you're not familiar with it. I know the Major League Fishing guys have been there, and there's been some other tournaments y'all might have seen. But what we did is decide to go up that river. And once again, there's other rivers I've fished before, and so what we did is pick that river section. We went up it, went off in some creeks, and there's some backwaters, and man, we took this boat as far as we can, found us a little area that was flat. I mean, guys, it was a 2-3 foot flat. There was no ditch. There was just some lily pads, but there were some trees. Of course, like I said, there's a lot of cypress trees there, but there was one group of trees that these fish were on. So like I said, nobody went and tried to find this area because it's hard to get a boat in. It was shallow, and the lake was kind of up and on its way down when we were there, as I realized by looking at the trees, using my eyes to visualize and see the water was coming down. So these fish followed that water, got in there, and guys, we found fish that nobody else was fishing for. When you're fishing these areas, keep it simple. Cincos, creature baits, brush hogs, okay, frogs, flukes, don't make it hard. Hey, and guys, like I said, don't be afraid to go put your boat in one of those areas that no one else is. I'm going to put the link of the other video I've talked about in the description below. Y'all make sure you go watch it. We appreciate you watching today's video.